What's up, guys? This is books I read in 2024. This is kind of overdue. I always procrastinate. Yeah, I'm probably a few days late or 10 days late. I don't know. But yeah, so this year I read a total of 14 books. It's not a crazy number like all those other YouTubers. But I mean, maybe this is more realistic. I actually have all the books I read right here, or most of them. Oh my god, it's kind of heavy. I might need a stand. Okay. Yeah, so not the biggest stack, but still a good year, I would say. So yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about each book and probably give my rating, at the end. I feel like my rating isn't a really good indicator of whether or not you should read a book or not. So I'll show the Goodreads rating as well. Speaking of Goodreads, I'm also gonna I should plug my Goodreads in. Oh, and storygraph. I don't know if anyone uses storygraph, but I have both, so I'm gonna pause for 2 seconds and pose, and I'm gonna have both of them beside me. Okay, so the first book I read was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I actually picked this book up because my friend read it the previous year, so 2023, and she gave it 5 stars, and she said she cried a lot. So I was like, that's a book I want to read. This is historical fiction, and it took place during World War II in Paris during the German occupation, so like the Nazi regime. As you know, with any war story, it's going to be heartbreaking and tragic, and I expected that, and it really did not disappoint. So my rating for this is 4 out of 5. Historical fiction. And the next book I read was Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I don't know. Okay, off the get-go, I'm gonna just say that this was 5 stars for me. Out of all the books I'm gonna be talking about, this is the one I'm most confident in recommending to literally anyone. I don't need to hear preferences, I don't want to hear any of that. This is the book I would recommend. It's about a hockey town. It's a very small forest town called, well, I'm gonna let you guess. But everything in this town revolves around hockey. You're like, what? I know nothing about hockey. Why would I read it? That's fair. I mean, yeah, why would you? But I'm telling you, just read it. Just read it. I mean, I knew nothing and I read it and I completely fell in love with it. I feel like I've said countless times in past videos, like, oh, this book has everything. That sentence is perfect for this. This literally has everything. Somehow, some way, you fall in love with every single character, with the exception of one. But I don't know how to explain it. Like, by the end, you feel like you know them all personally. Again, I read this with my friend, and we both gave it 5 stars. Hopefully, just like you seeing me, how flustered I am talking about it, makes you want to read it. Yeah, so the next book I read was Haruki Murakami's Sputnik, Sweetheart. And for me, it was all right. I've read Murakami's work before, Norwegian Wood being one of my favorite books of all time, Kafka on the Shore, which is very, very entertaining, very crazy. And I will say this is probably my least favorite of his, not because it's bad, but because I guess I didn't relate to it as much. So I give this a 3.5 out of 5. Some people have this as their favorite Murakami book, so take what I said with a grain of salt. And yeah, the next book I read was 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. So yeah, this is funny because I think I got this before the year started, so maybe around Christmas time, or for my birthday, which is in December 2023. And I was talking to my friend, and then I can't remember the conversation, but I think she was saying what do you hope to happen for the new year? And I was just saying my time management is just terrible. I should definitely work on it. And so she actually gifted me this book. This is actually a really great self-help or self-improvement read. So this isn't what you think a time management book would be like. I remember going into the book, I was expecting to read about all these different time hacks. One of them being oh, you gotta wake up at 6 a.m. You gotta follow this. So it wasn't anything like that. This says, no, you just don't have time. That's the reality. You're never gonna have enough time. And it just tries to get you to come to accept that and to come to peace with that. Once this book gets that point across, it says, okay, now that you understand yourself, that there's not enough time in the world for you to do everything you want to do. What do you actually love the most? Like, what do you actually want to do? Prioritize that. That's how you're going to make the most out of your time, out of your life, and that's where you're going to get the most satisfaction. Actually a great eye-opening book, and definitely helped me see time and like the world around me in a different perspective. And yeah, I don't have a rating for this. That's just because in general I don't really give ratings to like self-help, self-improvement books. But yeah, the next book I read is actually a collection of short stories called What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver. I've been wanting to read this for a long time because in one of my favorite movies, Stuck in Love, one of the main characters talks about this book, saying that this is his favorite book. So yeah, I finally got around to it, and it's crazy just like how much can be said in so little words. Like some of the short stories in here are like 2 pages long. I don't know how to describe it. It's just everything was so thought-provoking, which is what I really like. I like when, you know, I finish something and after like days later it's still lingering in my head. Or like days later I'm like, okay, I'm gonna search this up. I want to know what other people are thinking. But like I did that with like every story in this collection. So I definitely recommend, and I recommend the movie Stuck in Love if you haven't seen it. But I actually don't have a rating for this just because, you know, there's different stories in it. So all right, the next book I read was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This is literally a masterpiece. Yeah, so the reason why I found this book so compelling, honestly, is because of the themes in this book. There's a lot of like good versus evil, rich versus poor. Someone might be wealthy, but you know, they're poor in like other aspects of their life. So someone could have all this money, but their relationships, they lack that. They lack love around them. And honestly, I don't know what else to say other than this is literally a masterpiece. I give this a 5 out of 5. One of my favorite books that I've ever read. And Tim Shell. The next book I read was Frederick Bachman's Us Against You. So yes, this is part of the Beartown series, which consists of 3 books. This is the second installation. And yeah, everything I said about the first book applies to this book. Just really amazing characters, writing obviously great. I don't think that while I think you should read this if you read the first one, I don't think it's a must read. I gave this a 4 out of 5. The next book I read is this pretty underground book. Not many people know about it. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I mean, this is literally the OG enemies to lovers. Mr. Darcy. I was taking notes. I remember the quote. It was, "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." I don't know. That was like one of my favorite quotes. Something about like classic literature and its prose. Everything is so beautiful. Like I wish I could talk like that, even though it would sound completely stupid in this darn age. But there were a lot of parts in this book, or this book in general actually, is kind of amusing, like very funny. There's a lot of like silly banter between characters, which I found really entertaining. Yeah, check it out. 4 out of 5. Okay, I turned off the main light, so I think it's a little bit better. I don't know, it took me forever to do that. Okay, yeah, so the next book I read is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. So I was actually gifted this book by one of my good friends because this was her favorite book, and it did take me a while to get to it, but I did finally get to it, and I'm so glad I did. When I say I'm glad I did, it's not because I was happy, because this book will just literally destroy you. It's a very sad, tragic story. It follows 2 women, Miriam and Layla, or Lila. And, you know, in the beginning, they're living their separate lives. And so you wonder how they become intertwined, and then you realize that, oh, so they become married to the same man, Rashid. And again, this takes place in Afghanistan, and the Taliban have rule over Afghanistan. So as you can imagine, all these things that Miriam and Layla, and just the country in general, like what they have to go through, the mistreatment of women, and just like the constant fighting, a lot of heartbreaking stuff, you know, motherhood, sisterhood, and you know, the sacrifices that come with each of those. This is also another book I wouldn't hesitate recommending to anyone. Like I said, even though it's a tragic story, I think it's something that everyone needs to read. Because, yeah, like after you finish it, you're like, oh, like, damn, like, that was really sad. And then you take a step back and you're like, wait, like this is happening currently to millions of people. Like this is the life that they live. And if anything, like this is toned down a bit, you know, because it's in a book. Definitely eye-opening, and definitely one of the best books I've read. As you may predict with the way I'm talking about this book, this got a 5 out of 5. And yeah, please read. The next book I read was The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I remember talking about this with a friend, so let me just read what I wrote. I'm gonna put it like right here or something, and I'll read it too. It's like, a lesson on tending to the relationships that matter most to you and living life to the fullest. And the whole concept of it is just so beautiful. As a butler, his whole life was dedicated to serving others, but he never gave time and effort to serve himself and his own life. So, 5 out of 5 book. Whoa, one of the best books of the decade. All right, the next book I read was Happy Place by Emily Henry. After 1,000 Splendid Suns and The Remains of the Day, I knew I needed sort of like a calmer, chiller book. One a little bit more happy. Ironically chose Happy Place, although I won't say it was happy for the most part. It was all right. I don't like love the book. Actually, I think I ranted about it to my friend. It makes me sound like a hypocrite, but I ranted about like the miscommunication, and then my friend brought up like how I like normal people and like how that's basically miscommunication. But I don't know, it's different. It's different. This couple was together for 8 years, and then he broke it up over a 4-minute phone call. Like, no. I gave this, I think, a 3.5 out of 5. And I know a lot of people love this book, so again, you know, it's just me. Like, a lot of people love this book. All right, the next book I read was First Love by Ivan Turgenev, Russian author, and this is also a classic. So, yeah, the premise is, well, it's about first love. So there's this boy, and then he has new neighbors. Some princess is moving in, and he sees the daughter for the first time, and he just like immediately falls in love, like love at first sight. And yeah, it was just very interesting to like, you see like all the inner workings of this teenage boy's mind, like all the contradictions that come with first love, and like, oh, I love her so much, does she love me back? I'm thinking about her, is she thinking about me? And yeah, very nostalgic in a way, but it's unrequited love for the most part. A little heartbreaking, but you know, that's the nature sometimes. I gave this a 4 out of 5. All right, the next book I read was Alone with You in the Ether by, okay, for the longest, I thought it was Olivia Blake. Olivier? Olivier? Oh, I like Olivier. Olivier Blake. Another book recommended to me by one of my friends who really enjoyed it. And yeah, if you like reading about relationships that aren't perfect, or relationships that are comprised of two broken people, then you would enjoy this. If you enjoyed this book, or if you would probably really like Cleopatra and Frankenstein, or vice versa, if you read Cleopatra and Frankenstein, you would like this book. I wouldn't say this is plot driven at all. It's definitely character driven, and you see how these two, you know, vastly different people and personalities, how they kind of clash, how they try to navigate life, because it's clear that they love each other, but sometimes their differences get the best of them. This book may or may not wreck you. So I just saw a review on Goodreads that I thought was super funny. It says Olivia Blake could do Romeo and Juliet, but Shakespeare could not do Alone with You in the Ether. I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, so I gave this a 4 out of 5. Alright, so the last and final book I read for 2024 was Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I'm really sad I don't have the book with me, because it is this beautiful hardcover with the cover art being like a chessboard, and like the chess pieces are the different characters. Yeah, so that's really sad that I don't have it with me. But I guess it's a good thing because it's not with me because I let my friend borrow it. And there's this one quote. It's like, a book is not finished until you've let someone borrow it. So I'm finishing the book. It was extremely well written. The thing with Rooney is she's always going to write characters beautifully, but they're beautiful because they're not perfect, you know? They all have their imperfections. Yeah, I mean, the way Rooney like really emphasizes like relationships and relationship dynamics, it's very applicable to a lot of the things we experience or I experience in real life. Like, how can I manage my relationships, my friendships with other people around me? So I gave Intermezzo initially a 4.5, but I read it with my friend, and you know, after we discussed it, I feel like it's a 5. It's a 5-star. So yeah. So that's all. I read 14 books. Pretty good year. And next year, 2025, or I guess this year because I'm posting late and it's already January. My goal is to read 15 books. So hopefully I get there. We'll see. And so yeah, to my friends and family watching, hello. And to the random people that might get recommended this video, hello. Yeah, follow me on Goodreads or Storygraph or whatever. And bye.